Hi everybody. Okay, a little painting today. Subject, a little bit different. The subject, not so unusual, but I think the approach is what I want to talk about today. That's a little unusual, perhaps. I want to speak about, in my classes, in my workshops and live classes, I talk a great deal about the importance of trying to paint genuine human experiences rather than just images of things or places or people. And that's an okay thing to say perhaps, but what in the heck does that mean? How do you paint a real experience? How do you do that? So I don't think there's any one way or one right answer. And I'm not saying I always do it as well as could be hoped, but it is always my attempt. Rather than just trying to paint a depiction of something I'm looking at, I try to paint how I feel about it or my very human reactions to it. And sometimes that involves painting not just from visual cues or real life observations so much as it means painting from dreams or memories or just pure invention, imagination. It's another topic, but it's related. I just feel these things are all connected very integrally. They're not separate ideas. What we look at is one thing. What we choose to see or what we're able to see by looking at something has a great deal to do with how we feel, what our reactions are, what we remember, what we anticipate. These are all, again, not separate buckets. They are all one way of perception, I think, that's integral along a spectrum from just pure imitation of what you observe to pure expression to what we can only imagine. All along that spectrum are the ways that we get to be an artist, and we get to express ourselves. Okay, mini lecture over, but the subject matter today is a view I want to do of the house where I grew up. It's just after Thanksgiving here in America, a fraught holiday, but generally it's all about being grateful and giving gratitude for what we have. Anyway, so my thoughts, I went home. I grew up in rural Ohio. I went home to spend time with my family, who's mostly all still there. And anyway, we weren't here. This is my childhood home, but we were nearby. And of course, this place was on my mind. And any place that's very dear to us as humans is obviously, or most likely, fraught or loaded with memories and genuine human feelings. So I thought it was a good subject for what I'm going to try to do today. I have photographs of our childhood home, but I'm choosing not to use them as reference. I'm going to only be drawing from, as visual reference, just a couple of images I've done over the years. This is one, the front of our house. And this is another I did a few years ago, a watercolor of the back of our house before we even moved in, when my parents first saw it, long before I was around. So this painting was done from a photograph of my childhood home. Gosh, I don't know, in the 1940s, I guess, long before I was even a thought. So I'm going to use these two, as well as, moreover, just my memories of the place to do a painting. This view in particular is going to be focal because this is the back of the house, this is the original kitchen, and upstairs was my bedroom. My brother and I spent a lot of time fighting here. Anyway, it's a very special place to me. Love that room. It was in an attic. My father refinished it, beautiful wood paneling, beautiful room just filled with all of my childhood memories. So what I want to do is just take cue from both of these images, and as I say, more from my memories of the place, and do another kind of a painting. Earlier today, I worked up these two really quick sketches of what I have in mind. What I thought I would try to do is an evening view in the winter. So I think you can see where I'm going here, featuring my bedroom window as the only real source of light in the painting. So essentially this will be a warm light. And the rest of the painting, because I want it to look wintry and more evening-like, will be cool tones, probably largely in blues, teals, maybe some violets, but a very, very narrow palette, keeping it a little bit, I don't want to say hostile, but almost pleasantly inhospitable. Cool, cold colors, and then leavened by this one bright spot of warm light. So here, this whole intention is to try to do what I was saying. Try to paint my experiences, my memories of the place, and as a little bit of symbolism, just that one spot of warm light amongst a field of cool, less hospitable color. I think it'll just tell the story not just of my life, but probably for all of us, where we want to find those places, those people in our lives that provide us with a little bit of warmth amongst a very cold, sometimes cold and inhospitable environment, which we can all sometimes find ourselves. Technically, as laying out a painting, I first thought I might do a vertical view, emphasizing sort of the height of this element of the house, pushing the window up a little bit, some secondary lights on the snowy ground outside. But overall I thought, although this is fine, I think it might be a little bit more true to my memories or my feelings about this place to do a slightly different view, and I think this is the way to go. A little bit less sky, more of a horizontal format. This keeps it more grounded. In a way, a horizontal format automatically keeps you more grounded, more ground-based. Sometimes this format could just be a little bit more personal, a little more intimate. The vertical format can tend to be a little bit more removed, a little more grand sometimes, and I don't want this to be in any way a grand painting. I want it to be a moment, small, private, intimate. So I think the horizontal format is the way to go, more ground-based, as I said, more space in a way left and right to play around with a range of cool tones. Lack of clarity too. Because I want it to be an evening view, I want everything around the window to be softer, less specific, less obvious, less easy to pull out, less easy to identify what's going on, and then just this real crispness and clarity to the window itself. Playing around here with maybe a secondary source of light, one porch light. This was an old porch on the side of the house. It was long closed in and then expanded, but never mind. I'm going to draw it as if it might have been in the 1940s, perhaps, whenever my parents bought this place. And maybe just a glint of light on the snow down below. So sort of secondary and tertiary bits of light. This primary source of light will be that window. And the sky, not light, but not the darkest. I want it to be lighter. So a hierarchy of light would definitely be, this would be 1. This porch light, if I do it, would be 2. Little glint on the snow would be 3, and probably similar here. So if I build up that pattern of light, I want it to be subtle because I really want that to be focal. But I think some secondary and tertiary bits of light just to balance out the composition will be good. A little bit of concern here on the horizontal is making sure that this remains focal, meaning I want to zoom in as much as I comfortably can while still showing enough context. So I'm a little worried this may be too much vague information left and right, but overall I think it's pretty balanced, so I think that's what I'm going to go with. Paper, I'm using Baohong rough paper, 300 gram, it's very white, it's a very textured surface. I argued with myself a little bit about the right paper to use. I'm always talking about paper choice. I think all the art materials we can acquire, seek out and buy, there's nothing more important than the surface of the paper. I'm not downplaying the importance of pigments, brushes, and everything else, but the paper surface is what really communicates the intent of your work, quite literally more than anything else. So, that said, I have a piece of Baohong rough, as I said. It's a Master's Choice professional grade paper. I know a lot of you are playing around with Baohong these days, but they sell it online in all sorts of, well, generally inferior grades, student grades. It's a tricky kind of paper. So if you want to play around with it, I encourage you to, but I steer toward the Master's Choice variety. It's just a superior grade of paper. So I'm just sketching out the house here, as you can see on the paper itself. Why I'm choosing this paper I think is important to talk about. Again, it's not one paper that matters so much. I could have done this on any number. I was thinking originally of doing it on a very soft paper to sort of tell a very soft story. So perhaps a Saunders Waterford or something cold pressed that had less texture. But ultimately, I opted to go with the more textured Baohong because I think if I do it well, when I'm done, the texture of the paper will help me to portray all of the dominant cool parts of the painting in a hazier, fuzzier, less specific way, if that makes sense. I think a crisper paper where more detail could be expressed would make my way a little uphill. I want this painting to look a bit fuzzy, a bit out of focus almost, except for this window. And so the more textured paper will help me achieve that effect. Why would I want to do that? Well, because it's evening, so things are a little out of focus when there's not enough light to see what's happening. Also, winter, I think I might even be able to convey a slight sense of snow or an effect of imperfect atmospheric conditions, I guess I could say. If the sky, the atmosphere were a bit fuzzier, a little bit less crisp and clean. If I were doing a view in bright sunlight where I wanted very specific crisp shadows, don't know that this paper would necessarily be wrong, but it might not be ideal either. So anything you can do to help portray the intent of your painting is something you should think about. The intent of this painting is that it be essentially a visual memory. So sometimes memories are not really that clear either. We have a generally good idea of what we remember, what was happening in our dream, perhaps. But sometimes our memories are a little hazy, a little fuzzy, a little less specific. So you see, everything I'm doing is trying to help enforce that idea. It's a gentle 2-point perspective, as you can see. You can see a bit of both sides of the house. Already though, I'm wondering if there's just too much space on the right side of the painting. I'm not convinced it's a big problem. I am convinced I probably should have spent a little longer in my sketchbook, because that's the place to sort out compositional questions and answer them before you start drawing. I think I'll be okay, but worst comes to worst, I can crop that side of the painting off. I just don't like to I like to try to solve those issues before they crop up, but it's okay. I don't really want to make this element of this painting any larger. If I did, I think I'd be pushing the top limit. It's okay. I think I'll just carry on. It looks not bad. So since I stubbornly refuse to dig out any reference photos, I'm just sort of making this house up a bit from memory and a bit just from invention, and it's okay. It's not a house portrait. I want it to be the story of a memory. So if the specifics of the house aren't quite right, that's probably all to the good. Unless you're perfect and never make mistakes, this eraser, these white vinyl, very, very soft erasers, the Mono by Tombow, just for example, is a really good eraser. Hard ones can scratch your watercolor paper, so if you use an eraser at all, the softest you can get is really the way to go. Yeah, this side of the painting, I'm getting into a lot of extraneous material that I don't know if it's going to add to the overall effect. But anyway, as I said, I'm just going to carry on. I do remember the window in my bedroom went all the way to the floor, as they often did in these older houses. I think this house was originally built in 1880, 70 something, 78 or 9. Just a very typical Midwestern farmhouse. Beautiful in a way, but not intended to be a grand house, and it certainly wasn't. But did love this place. So just roughed in the window because this is going to be the major source of warmth and light for the whole painting, and I want to just sort of assess if I have too much other material showing or not. I think we're okay, but I'm sensing I may want to crop in a bit around the image to more clearly focus here, but we'll see. It's going to carry on. There's a window in the old original kitchen, which got changed quite a bit over the years. It won't be illuminated, but I want it to be subtly visible. Oh, first line I always draw in any sketch or drawing is the horizon. I think you can see I've lowered the horizon exaggeratedly low. If a person were standing here, they'd be about this high, which means the horizon will be about up here, but I've lowered it as if I'm sitting down or standing down the hill that gently sloped this way, just to help subtly look up at the architecture of the old house a little bit. In my courses on perspective, I love talking about things like that. You know, you're in charge of where you put your horizon, so you're in charge of how much you look down or up at any subject, and the effect may be subtle, but it could not be more important. It's just always worth thinking about. So this porch never existed in my lifetime. It was long gone when I came on the scene, and this was closed in and extended into a larger, newer kitchen. But I just recall from the original old photographs that this was an open kitchen at the back of the house at one point. And I don't know what went on back here, a couple of windows, a door perhaps. Doesn't matter, it's going to all be in these shadows. I remember, but I also illustrated it. Originally there was a small outbuilding here off to the side. Certainly this is not going to be an important part of the composition if I choose to show it. And I'm only considering it because I think it might help flesh out this side of the composition, so I don't have to show too much of the house going back. I have a thought in my head, but it's kind of hard to express. I think if I do this correctly, it might help add more confusion purposefully, a jumble of shapes and tones lost in the wintry atmosphere. So again, it's not to be more illustrative, it's not to be more accurate, it's to make a better, more effective drawing, or at least that is my hope. Yeah, these outbuildings were also long gone by the time I showed up, so in a way, it's liberating. Who knows what they look like? So now I'm thinking of placing some of these secondary sources of light. A little glow I want in the sky, just a subtle, simple line of trees behind. I will have to do something about fleshing out this side of the house. I'm kicking myself for not looking at photos, but I know it had sort of a chamfered 45-degree corner, and then the rest of the house went back into space. But I think as fuzzy and as general as I can get about that, the better it's going to look. Something like that. Also, I learned in architecture school, if you're not in love with the way some part of your building looks, plant a tree. And that's not exactly why I'm doing this, although it doesn't hurt. But I think there were these large, in those days I think, elm trees and locust trees surrounding the house. So I think as framing and also as a way to obscure that corner of the painting and also interject some more mystery and obscurity, different shapes, both rectilinear and curvilinear, I think will be nice. Yeah, I think that'll work. All that's going through my mind while I'm doing all of this is just remembering that this is the focal point of the painting. Everything else around is going to be very hazy, just shifts of tone, I think, and shape. So, not to say none of it's important. Every element of the painting is important. But as far as what's going to be the star of the show, what's the focal point, all of those things are running through my brain. So here I'm just going to draw in some generic shapes as if some fencing for the composition, not important. Actually, for the composition, yes, they're important. For accurate description, not important, because I don't know what they really were. So I'm just drawing compositional shapes to help flesh out the rest of the painting and add a little bit of ambiguity and additional texture here and there. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Again, this is all going to melt into shadows. I really want this sense of a little bit of light spilling out on the landscape. I don't want this to be very strong. I want it to be pretty subtle. So just sort of a diagonal line that's a bit lighter. And again, I want to draw a little bit of a light hanging over the porch. I don't know what it really looked like, doesn't matter. But just some subtle source of light here, as if a lantern or something might spill out over the snowy landscape here. Some subtle shadowing off the fence that I drew. Again, very subtle stuff. I don't want to make a big deal out of it. Just elements to graphically flesh out the rest of the painting. If I were doing a more standard painting, I could see adding a tree here or something to balance out. I'm not saying I don't want to, but again, it's tonal painting, less descriptive, or definitely not illustrative. So I want to be very subtle with anything I put over here on the this side. There was another outbuilding, a barn of some sort, which we might just slightly hint at here in the background. And I think that'll be enough. So as far as the composition, I think I can see, again, major light here, a little bit of light in the sky, tiny bit of light on the snow, and secondary source of light here, probably where the lantern is. Why I'm doing these various light bits is I'm, in my mind, and also in my sketchbook, thinking about a pattern of light that'll pull you through. Rather than just this spot, I want these sort of secondary and tertiary bits of light to form, I hope, an appealing pattern of light like that. So, if done well, the intent is that these light sources will pull you in, terminating right there, pull you into the painting, and make, for the viewer, a little bit more of an experience rather than just, hopefully, a pretty picture. I want it to be more of an emotional experience for the viewer as well as for me. So that it becomes, I mean, this is really my goal in all of my artwork, even though it's coming from me and it's in a sense it's about me. I want it ideally to be about all of us, so that my objective memories could resonate hopefully with somebody else in a more in a relatable way. Whether you grew up in a house anything like this or not, that my story might resonate with you in some way in terms of memories, fond memories of home, and moreover, that place in the world where you feel safe, whether it's a real place, an imaginary place, a memory of a place, that one place. It could be a person, it could be a pet, it could be a physical house, it could just be a state of mind. But that one place in this world where you always feel at home and safe. That's what this painting is all about. So I am going now to mix up my palette, and I'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes.